Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
It started over something stupid, a scheduling conflict. I had asked if she could switch her late client on Thursday so we could catch dinner with some old friends, people we hadn't seen in years. I was already bracing for a no, maybe a tired excuse or one of her patented eye rolls. What I didn't expect was what she actually said. I don't need to meet your needs. There was no sarcasm, no heat, just plain, casual finality. She was folding laundry, neatly matching socks without even glancing up. Her tone had the kind of offhand indifference that made it worse than if she'd screamed it in a fight. And just like that, she moved on. No apology. No awareness of how deeply that sentence cut into me. As if her responsibility to our marriage began and ended with folding shirts and vacuuming when guests were expected. I stood there, still holding my phone, mid-text. A wave of disbelief washed over me. Not anger, not sadness. Something else. Like the sound of a door quietly shutting inside you, when you didn't even realize had been open all this time. She had no idea what she'd just done. That night, we lay in the same bed, on separate islands of sheets, backs turned. The silence between us wasn't tense anymore. It was hollow. I stared at the ceiling, the digital clock casting faint red numbers on the wall like a countdown I hadn't started, but knew would run out sooner or later. I didn't try to reach for her. That impulse, the one that made me want to fix things, soften her edge, hold her despite it all, had gone quiet. What made it worse was how comfortable she seemed. Comfortable in this cold arrangement. Comfortable turning off the parts of herself that used to touch me in more than just a literal way. The woman I married had warmth, curiosity, hunger for life, for us. But this version of her? She was just a routine wrapped in excuses. A ghost in yoga pants and lip gloss. I replayed her words in my head until they began to settle like sediment. I don't need to meet your needs. What was I supposed to do with that? Build intimacy with a woman who felt no obligation to reciprocate? Was I just supposed to carry on like nothing had changed, except that everything had? I started thinking back to when things began unraveling. Maybe it was after her promotion, when she started saying she was too tired for anything, but still had energy for endless Instagram scrolls. Or maybe it was earlier, when we stopped having real conversations and replaced them with transactional exchanges about bills and errands. Little deaths, I used to call them. Death by 1,000 sighs. But this was the moment I realized something much bigger had died. My marriage wasn't in crisis. It was in hospice. I'd given and given, not just money, time, or effort, but the kind of emotional patience people don't write songs about. I had allowed my own needs to shrink so hers could have room. And now, she was telling me I didn't even matter enough to pretend. So that night, as I lay there with the ache of her words echoing under my ribs, I made a decision. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to throw a tantrum or ask her to explain herself. I'd done all that before. This wasn't about making a point. It was about making a shift. She didn't feel obligated to meet my needs? Fine. Then I would no longer go out of my way to meet hers. Not in pettiness. Not out of vengeance. Just clarity. If I was invisible to her emotional radar, then she'd learn what it felt like when her own needs slowly disappeared from my orbit too. She hadn't noticed anything yet. She still thought she held the high ground, that she delivered some hard truth I needed to swallow. But soon, she'd feel it, the weight of being unconsidered, unmet, unseen. And when she finally looked for the man who used to anticipate her every thought, she'd find a mirror instead. Empty, silent, reflective. This wasn't about making her pay. It was about showing her what she broke, and letting her live with the silence she'd mistaken for strength. She didn't notice it at first. The withdrawal. I didn't make a grand announcement or draw a line in the sand. I just stopped filling in the spaces she used to take for granted. The next morning, she asked if I could stop by the dry cleaner on my way home. I nodded, but I didn't go. Her coat hung there for 3 more days before she remembered it herself. That evening, she came home from yoga, peeled off her jacket, and asked, "Did you grab my coat?" I looked up from the book I was pretending to read, gave her a small smile, and said, "No, I forgot." I didn't explain, didn't offer to fix it, just went back to my page. She blinked, clearly caught off guard. But she didn't push it. 2 nights later, I made myself dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and grilled chicken. Enough for one. She walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge, clearly expecting something to be waiting. "No leftovers?" she asked, confused. "I wasn't sure when you'd be home," I said calmly, wiping down the counter. "I told you I had that late call." "You didn't," I replied, setting down the sponge. Maybe she had. Maybe she hadn't. I genuinely didn't care. That was the point. She stood there for a second longer, then sighed and pulled out a yogurt and a slice of bread. No complaints, just a small grimace of confusion. It was happening. She was beginning to feel the temperature drop. Our routine started changing in tiny, imperceptible ways. I stopped reminding her about appointments. She missed a dental checkup and blamed it on a work notification glitch. I just nodded, not bothering to correct her. She left a pile of laundry in the hamper for a week. I used to do it without being asked. This time, I just pulled out what I needed and left the rest. Eventually, she asked, "Are you ever going to do laundry again?" "I've been managing fine," I said, folding a towel. "You can too." She didn't respond. Just looked at me like she couldn't quite figure out what had changed, but knew something had. Evenings became quieter. I didn't ask about her day. She still talked sometimes, trying to pull me into familiar rhythms, but I gave her only what she gave me. Shallow responses, distracted nods, enough to keep things polite, but nothing more. And then came her birthday. That morning, I got up early, went for a run, and made myself breakfast. She wandered into the kitchen in her robe, half expecting to see flowers or maybe a small gift on the table. I'd never missed one before. Even during our worst years, I had always made an effort. Handmade cards, spa reservations, thoughtful notes tucked under her coffee cup. This year, nothing. "Morning," I said, sipping my coffee. She waited, looked at the counter, then the fridge, then me again. "You forget something?" I glanced at the wall clock. "I left the trash out last night. I'll take it this evening." Her lips parted slightly, eyes narrowing. "No, I mean today's my birthday." I tilted my head like I was trying to remember something. "Right. Happy birthday." That was it. I didn't even get up from my seat. She stood there, staring at me like I had just kicked the dog. It was the first crack in her armor. Later that day, I heard her call her sister. I didn't listen on purpose, but the house was quiet and she wasn't exactly whispering. "I don't know," she said, her voice strained. "He's been different. Distant. Cold." There was a pause. "No, he's not cheating. It's not like that. He's just not doing anything. For me. Like at all." Another pause. "No, I didn't forget his birthday. I mean, maybe I've been a little focused on work, but this feels different." I stood in the hallway, staring at the family photo we'd taken 5 years ago. I remember the day clearly. She had fussed over her outfit, made me change shirts 3 times. We had argued just before the shoot, but we smiled anyway, like we always did. Something about that photo had always bothered me. How perfect we looked when we were anything but. That night, she made dinner. Homemade stir-fry, one of my favorites. She set the table and even lit candles. I walked in, raised an eyebrow. "What's the occasion?" She hesitated. "Just wanted to do something nice." I nodded. "Looks good." We ate mostly in silence. She watched me, waiting for something. Maybe gratitude, maybe the old me. I gave her neither. Just finished my plate, washed my fork, and went to the living room. She followed me 10 minutes later, sitting beside me on the couch, close enough to touch, but not touching. "You've been different lately." I shrugged. "You think? You used to care." I turned to her, met her gaze. "I used to think you did too." That hit. She blinked, her expression tightening. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You told me you don't need to meet my needs," I said. "I've just been adjusting." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. She didn't have a comeback. That night, she reached for me in bed, just a hand, brushing against mine. I didn't move away, but I didn't clasp it either. Let it hang there in the space between us. She rolled over eventually, quietly. And in that moment, I knew she finally felt it. The loneliness she had handed me long ago, now repackaged and returned. The difference? I wasn't trying to fix it anymore. By the 3rd week, it wasn't just her mood that changed, it was her face. Her eyes had a kind of constant searching in them, like she was trying to read something in me that wasn't there anymore. And she wasn't the only one noticing. It was a Saturday afternoon when her mother dropped by unannounced. I was in the garage tinkering with the shelves, pretending to need the space. When I came inside, they were already in the kitchen, voices low but tense. "She's worried," her mother said, barely acknowledging me as I walked past to grab a bottle of water. "You've been distant." I smiled, polite and flat. "I'm just tired lately." Her mother studied me for a beat too long, then turned back to her. "You used to brag about how he spoiled you. Now you look like someone who misplaced her credit card." I almost laughed at that. Not because it was funny, but because it was the closest thing to honesty I'd heard from her mother in years. My wife didn't answer. She just looked down at the coffee cup in her hands, swirling the contents like they held answers. Later that night, I caught her scrolling through our old photos. Not just random ones, but our honeymoon, the birthdays, the time we spent a weekend in a cabin and didn't leave the bed for nearly 2 days. I watched from the doorway for a moment before she realized I was there. She quickly clicked the screen off, like it was something shameful. "You okay?" I asked, tone neutral. She nodded. "Just looking. Find anything interesting?" She hesitated, then said, "We used to be happy." I raised an eyebrow. "We used to be a lot of things." She wanted to say more. I could feel it, but she didn't. And I didn't press. That was the new language between us. Unfinished thoughts, quiet acknowledgments of decay. A few days later, I heard her on the phone again, this time with one of her friends, Sasha, the kind of woman who always had wine and judgment ready in equal measure. "I don't get it," my wife said. "He's not angry. He's not even passive-aggressive. He's just done. Like I could vanish and he wouldn't notice." Pause. "No, I didn't do anything. I mean, maybe I said something I shouldn't have, but it's not like I cheated or anything." Another pause. "I don't know. I thought I was setting boundaries. But now he's the one with walls I can't climb." I moved quietly away before she could hear me. I didn't want her to know I heard that. Not yet. But the real exposure came from someone unexpected, her friend Amanda. The one who had always been on her side, always nodded a little too eagerly at her complaints, always made me feel like the unwelcome plus one in my own marriage. She dropped by one evening while I was working in the yard. They sat on the patio, 2 glasses of wine between them. I stayed out of view, but close enough to catch pieces of the conversation. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but when I heard my name, I didn't move. "I think you pushed him too far," Amanda said. "He used to worship you." My wife scoffed. "It's not like I mistreated him. You may not have yelled or cheated, but you were never kind, either. You treated him like an accessory. You stopped touching him, stopped listening. He was a husband, not a pet." Silence. Then my wife said, "I didn't think he'd ever stop trying." Amanda sipped her wine. "That's the problem. You thought he'd always be there." That hit harder than anything I could have said myself. They didn't know I was listening. But for the first time, I heard someone else confirm what I had spent months, years, trying to deny. That I wasn't crazy. That what I felt wasn't imagined or exaggerated. That slowly, bit by bit, she had emptied me out and acted surprised when there was nothing left. The next day, she tried something she hadn't done in a long time. She came into my office while I was finishing up some emails, placed a mug of coffee on my desk, just the way I used to do for her when she pulled late hours, and kissed my cheek. "Thought you could use this," she said gently. I thanked her. Measured. Careful. She lingered for a second, like she wanted to sit, talk. But I turned back to my screen. We weren't there yet, and she knew it. Later that night, she stood at the bedroom door for a long time, watching me as I folded laundry. I glanced up briefly, then kept going. "Do you hate me?" she asked. I looked at her, my hands pausing mid-fold. "No." She nodded, almost in relief. "But I stopped needing you." Her face froze, and for the first time, I saw it. True regret. Not guilt. Just the slow, painful recognition that something permanent had shifted. And it didn't come with a slammed door or a screaming match. It came with quiet. The kind that wraps around you like a fog and refuses to let go. I knew the confrontation was coming. It had been building, not with tension or theatrics, but with silence. With the way she watched me when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she hovered near me without speaking, as if waiting for a cue that never came. It happened on a Tuesday. She came home from work early, which was unusual. Her heels clicked slowly down the hallway, deliberate, rehearsed. I was in the kitchen, rinsing out my coffee mug. She stood in the doorway for a full minute before speaking. "We need to talk." I dried my hands on a towel and turned, leaning against the counter. "Okay." She didn't sit, just crossed her arms and narrowed her eyes in that way she used to when she thought she was preparing for battle. "I feel like I'm being punished," she said. I said nothing, just waited. "You've changed. You don't talk to me. You barely acknowledge me. I try, and you just shut me out. What is this? Some silent revenge?" There it was. The question she had been swallowing for weeks. I shook my head slowly. "It's not revenge." "Then what is it?" Her voice cracked a little at the edge, not loud, but strained. "It's clarity," I said. You told me you didn't feel responsible for my needs. I just decided to believe you. Her mouth opened and closed. That's not fair. You twisted what I said. No, I replied. I heard you. Maybe for the first time. You didn't say it in anger or by accident. You said it like a principle. Like you'd been carrying it for a while. She looked down at the floor. I didn't mean it like that. I know you didn't mean for me to take it seriously. But I did. Her shoulders dropped slightly. The posture of someone realizing they've been walking toward a cliff for miles, but only now noticing the edge. I was trying to protect myself, she said. I didn't want to be pressured all the time. I nodded. I understand that. But here's the thing. When you protect yourself by cutting me off, eventually I stop knocking. And now the door you lock to stay safe, it just feels like a wall. She looked up, eyes wet now. So what? You've given up? I gave up needing you, I said. That's different. Her hands trembled. She pressed them against her sides to still them. I didn't realize it had gotten this bad. You didn't want to. You thought I'd always be waiting. A long silence stretched between us. I saw the weight of everything we'd built, and everything we'd broken, settle on her face. She looked smaller than I remembered, less sure of herself. Maybe for the first time. I thought you'd fight harder for us, she whispered. I did, I said. You just weren't listening. That one landed. She turned away slightly, as if shielding herself. I almost pitied her. Almost. I want to fix this, she said after a while. I want to go to counseling. Talk about what went wrong. I considered that. I really did. I thought about the nights I lay awake wondering if she'd ever see me again, not physically, but fully. I thought about the birthdays spent in silence, the slow starvation of affection, the casual dismissal of everything I tried to give. I thought about how much it cost me just to get here. This place where I no longer reached for her in the dark. Then I said, you don't even know what you're trying to fix. You want the warmth back, but not the responsibility that comes with it. She stepped forward. I'm trying now. I looked at her evenly. Trying feels a lot like convenience when it only shows up after you're uncomfortable. She wiped at her cheek, frustrated. So what? You're done. I don't know yet, I admitted. But I know I'm not rushing back just because you finally noticed the emptiness you built. The room felt still, like we were both waiting for a verdict that had already been delivered, but neither of us wanted to say out loud. That night, we slept in the same bed. But the space between us had never felt wider. She didn't try to touch me this time. Just lay there with her back to me, her breathing sharp and uneven. And I stared at the ceiling, wondering if there was anything left worth saving, or if all we had now was a memory of what used to be. The days that followed were quiet, but not the kind of silence we once had. This was deliberate, a silence with a pulse, pacing, measuring, waiting. She had taken the initiative, I'll give her that. Small things, almost performative. Cooking dinner, folding my clothes, asking about my day with a cautious sweetness that felt practiced, maybe even rehearsed. But I didn't jump. I didn't rush to praise her effort or mirror her attempts. I didn't kiss her forehead and tell her it was okay. Because it wasn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. One evening, I came home to find she had made my favorite meal, chicken marsala, the one she used to say took too much time for a weeknight. The table was set. Wine was poured. Music played softly from the speaker like it was auditioning for a second chance. She tried to play it cool. Thought I'd surprise you. I sat down across from her and picked up my fork. Thanks. She waited for more. I didn't give it. Halfway through the meal, she finally said it. I miss us. I didn't look up. Do you miss me, or the version of me that tolerated being invisible? She blinked. That's not fair. No, I said quietly. It's not. None of this is. But it's true. She set down her fork. You're not giving me anything to work with. I gave you years, I said sharper now, of carrying the emotional weight, of asking for connection and getting excuses. You don't just get to wake up one day, cook a nice dinner, and hit reset. Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't wipe them. I was selfish. I didn't realize how far you'd pulled away until it was too late. I nodded slowly. And yet, here we are. She reached for my hand across the table. I didn't pull away, but I didn't close the gap either. Her fingers hovered just above mine, unsure. I want to earn it back, she whispered. Whatever's left. I finally looked at her. Not even disappointment. Just clarity. You want to fix something that isn't broken anymore, I said. It's just gone. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. The music played on. Something soft, mournful, out of place with the meal she worked so hard to prepare. That night, I slept in the guest room. She didn't ask why. She already knew. A week later, I told her I needed space, real space. Not an angry declaration, just a boundary. I didn't pack a suitcase in a storm of fury. I just calmly took what I needed, left the key on the counter, and walked out. Just an understanding that she finally arrived at the conversation, only to find the person she wanted to talk to wasn't there anymore. She texted, called, left a message one night saying she was willing to do whatever it takes. I didn't respond, because the man who once needed her to meet his needs no longer needed her at all. And she had spent so long ignoring what I gave, what I hoped for. She never expected to be the one left waiting for attention that would never come. I didn't vanish from her life. I just became what she made me for years, invisible. Only this time, it wasn't a punishment. It was a consequence. And some things, once gone, don't come back, no matter how pretty the table is set.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.